Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on Brian Eno's Ambient, Music for Airports, which was released in 1978. Here's an original copy right here. Um, I also have the first CD edition, and then also the Digipack version that was made in Holland. Um, this is definitely an important release. As some of you may know, ambient music is probably my favorite music of all time. I also have here's part four in the series on land, and then up here is hard to do this behind part three with Loraji, Day of Radiance, and also part two with the amazing Harold Budd. Rest in peace. Passed away a couple years ago. Part two, Plateau of Amir. And just in general, it's an amazing time if you guys are into ambient music and you don't have some of these, definitely get some of these. 78 through 82, 83 of EG editions and anything Brian Eno related was great. Possible Music with John Hassel. Of course, Pavilion of Dreams again with Harold Budd. And Harold Budd with the amazing The Pearl with Daniel Lanois. Lanois or Lanois? I always forgot how to pronounce that. Pick up any of those, and those are great additions to your collection, and very important for the history of ambient music. And there's a couple aspects I wanted to do with going through this review, and one is kind of the background on Brian Eno making the album, and which allows me to show off a little bit of my collection, and then also take into account his background, right, and what's going on and in music for installations and etc. And then also kind of go over my review of each song, and then just the overview of the album. And this is a really difficult album to review. And I think you'll find it interesting. I'm going to read a few of the reviews at the time when it came out from notable publications, and then also in retrospect, and you'll see how the opinion changed and how kind of, wouldn't say groundbreaking, but how forward-thinking Brian Eno's was with making this. So kind of going into the background and way back to the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. Music's always been there to entertain and sort of put you in the atmosphere of wherever they created, right? Like wherever the music was created or where they wanted to take you to. I always think that's really important to understand when doing music reviews and looking back at the music. And if you weren't necessarily around for the time of that particular album or what have you when it came out, you do have experience of other albums around that time, and you can sort of put yourself in that kind of mind frame to know what was going on at the time and how impactful it was, or how different it was, or comparing it to other stuff like that. It kind of helps you become a better, maybe better understanding of the quality of the music that's being played. But for music, for installations, music for background music is nothing new that Brian Eno created. So he just kind of took it to a different level and kind of a futuristic and maybe even a deeper thought. You go back to the 50s and 60s, right? Les Baxter's Sounds of Adventure, like he's taking you on an adventure with his music, right? So, using music to take you somewhere has always been part of popular music, in my opinion. Errol Garner's Concert by the Sea, he's taking you to the sea. This is music you would like to hear while you're near the water, right? Again, just music for the atmosphere. Harry Belafonte, Sings of the Caribbean. He's taking you to the Caribbean, right? So none of these are really new things, right, that Brian Eno did in the 70s. And you even take it a little bit further. This is Edgar Allan Poe, music for for Edgar Allan Poe, and Buddy Morrow and his orchestra. Some music for a theme, music for a music for a book, right? So he's accompanying a story on that. And then mood music has always been popular. I have a lot of these, Marvelous Miller moods, for example, Glenn Miller and his band. Mood music has always been popular. And that sort of evolved into the later 50s and 60s. Here's Paul Weston's Easy Listening. And when you go back to the 50s, there was a company called Muzak in roughly 1954 that was created, and basically what they did was they pumped music into like factories and in places of business and even homes to sort of, in a way kind of like a radio station would, but also sort of do it subliminally, and then it would help boost the morale of the workers and things like that. Or you fast forward into the 60s and 70s, supermarket music and department store music to help you buy and help you relax and maybe, get into the festive season with like playing some Christmas music in the background, right? So background music has always been important when it comes to like music, and then easy listening, and then also even into elevator music. And, just another few examples, like Buddy Morrow's puts you on the night train, right? Take you places. Also, stuff like Martin Denny, take you to the village, right? With his exotica stuff, right? You even have stuff like Ames Brothers, Smoochin' Time. They made songs for people to kiss to. Right? So everybody's making music for different things, right? Music for dining. Music for reading. Right? Music for tonight. Steve Allen. I got a chance to meet him before he passed away in the late 90s. At a studio I worked at. So you can see, like, they're making music for the mood, to help your mood, to take you on an adventure, to support something that you're doing, right? Like, so there's so many different ways that artists are sort of making background music, and Brian Eno sort of just took that to a different level. And I think then you take into account his anxiety of flying, right? So he was in an airport, and being a musician, or being into music. Of course, he was listening to the background music in the airport, and he thought that it wasn't ideal. There's a certain morality and a morbid side that he thought that was important. He doesn't necessarily put it in the music, but flying was a lot not as safe as it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s as it was in nowadays. I mean, I can remember growing up in the 70s and 80s, there was lots of air, it seemed like every 6 months to a year there was a flight going down and 200 people would die, like in Scotland, Lockerbie, and the Cerritos crash in 87 that was near me in Los Angeles. And, then you had, of course, terrorist hijackings and other things that could happen with planes, even, the Ternif one, is it? I'm trying to pronounce that. The airport in Tenerife, where 2 planes crashed on the airplane. It was the most lives lost, over 500 and something lives lost on 2 planes on a runway that got their instructions incorrect, and 500 or so people passed away. So being on a flight, let alone crashing into the water or something like that, the flying was not as safe as it was before, let alone the technology of planes. I have a little bit of a morbid curiosity when it comes to natural disasters, like volcanoes. I'm kind of like a semi-expert when it comes to like volcanoes and earthquakes and tsunamis and anything that's like natural disasters, even like asteroids and stuff like that. I find all those things very interesting. and the impact that they had on everything from society to agriculture to topography to everything. I like everything involved with natural disasters, and I do have a curiosity for for plane crashes and things like that. I've always been you know uh, interested in the impact that they have with society and things like that, and then also I was big into aviation growing up around the airports that I grew up with. I grew up next to Edwards Air Force Base, where the space shuttle landed in the late '70s and '80s, and I also was literally like 5 miles down from the runway where in Lockheed in Palmdale, where the SR-71 and B-1 bomber and stealth bombers and all the time would fly over our house. I mean, I would see the SR-71 literally like every other day. Like, it was amazing, like, growing up. So I was always interested in planes. So also, there's the aviation part of it, and the safety measures they took to make uh, um, planes more safe has always been interesting for me. But anyways, there's like a whole anxiety behind that. So Brian Eno thought that the music could be a little bit maybe more calming and a little bit better for the installation of going in the background music for airports. You so you kind of take those into account, and then he had just came off of a couple years earlier making Discrete Music, the album Discrete Music in 1975, with tape loops and different effects, and kind of making interesting paths for tones and tape and through effects boxes, and sort of coming up with different music through already processed or already made music, right, or tones or what have you, right? So all those three things kind of came to a culmination of him wanting to do ambient, and so in many ways he sort of coined the ambient term, and really that's the difference between ambient and easy listening or Muzak or mood music or adventure music or anything like that, right? Because this is music you didn't really have to necessarily pay attention, which is similar to the mood music there. You don't necessarily have to be listening to mood music for it to subliminally get you into whatever mood that they were trying to get you in, whether it be relaxed for reading or kissing your significant other, or dancing or eating, or what have you. There's all kinds of series of music for this, music for that in the 50s and 60s, and so that's kind of the precursor for this, right? So this is doing in a little bit more technology way for using tapes and stuff than doing it with orchestras, though, right? That would be the difference, and then also sort of setting it up for the future of ambient music and what it could be with the technology changes and synthesizers and things like that around. And kind of looking at the songs, just bear with me while I look at my notes, because I wrote a good amount about this, about the album here. The first song starts with a basic piano. It almost sounds like this is someone learning to play piano, right? It's very basic. And I think one thing to keep in mind with this album is teaching is an important part of this piece and the album itself. Each song in here sort of has a teaching aspect or an example worth of how to create ambient music or how to listen to ambient music, which is kind of the result of playing it, right? Would be somebody listening to it, so it's kind of par for the course. But teaching is I got that from listening to the album. I've heard this album quite a few times, a lot, but I never really tried to like rate it and review it to this extent. Usually I put it on the background like what it's supposed to be and just kind of let it play, and it has just kind of a sort of a relaxing, calm effect, but I never really like listened to it as somebody who would sort of critique it, and that's why I sort of brought up some other people's critiques and reviews of it as well, and I think you'll find those interesting, and I'll read some of those after this. Um, but again, teaching is a really important part of this album, and um, after the piano sort of presents itself, right, some electronic tones sort of appear, right? They almost sound like just little blimps of tones, like boom, boom, and it's sort of they almost feel like blimps, like blips, or just kind of sort of peeking through the composition. The piano's going, and it's just kind of like introducing itself, right? In a way, what it's doing is it's sort of balancing what was thought of as simple melodies with the beginning and a more advanced electronic signatures. It's kind of showing that a simple piano with a few tones can sort of create such more of a complex sort of electronic signature. And then around like 4 minutes and 30 seconds, those tones start to be more of the focal point, and the piano becomes sort of the background music, right? So it's almost teaching you perspective, and in a very simple way, how something can slightly take over it, even though they're still sort of doing the same thing. Maybe just becoming a little bit more repetitive, but as you become in tune with the piano part, and another part presents itself and morphs it, how this becomes the background music. It's very interesting. It's almost teaching you how to listen, and to have like discerning listening skills, or what do they call it? Selective hearing, right? It's almost teaching you how to do that. Around 4:30 also is the first time where a constant melodic tone sort of presents itself. In a way, it's almost teaching you how to build or evolve, or even to have, again, discrete listening, which was a project he had earlier with the album. But it sounds like you're watching a sundial in like some ancient garden. Like moves very slow. You're almost seeing time move, and it's fairly warm because the first track is a little bit warmer than the other ones, so it almost feels like you're like in a warm garden, maybe out behind, wouldn't say garden like lush garden, but just kind of a stark kind of 75-degree weather. It's just a little bit warm, but you're kind of in a garden, and there's a sundial, and it's almost like you're seeing time. But you're in a very relaxing and ancient, but very comfortable, and reflective too, I suppose, environment. At around 7:10, there starts to be a second constant alternate tone, adding to the depth. Still, the piano plays like it's childlike piano part, right? It's very childlike and very, very basic. At like 10 minutes and 30 seconds, it sort of goes to a complete silence. And then a couple seconds pass, and then the song seems to wind down again with the basic piano. But now with more elongated tones that has a bit of hope to it. And at 12:20, the most advanced or futuristic tone sort of shows. And it's almost teaching you how to layer things, or how to be more complex with something so basic. The fluctuations and the absence of sound becomes as important as the music itself, and that's the thing with ambient music is the space is as important as the tones, and this is kind of teaching you that in all sense of the term ambience. This is the truest form of ambience, where there's nothing going on, and the absence of sound makes you kind of, the absence of music sound sort of blends into the environment, right? And that's when the nature sounds and the environment can sort of take over for that, right? So if you were listening to this like outside or something like that, and you sort of heard the tones, and then it goes to quiet. Then you sort of hear some nature, maybe some birds or something like that, or background city noise or what have you. It sort of just introduced the background ambience into your into that song, right? So now you're part of that sound installation. Your environment is part of that ambience, right? So I think that's, it's just in so many ways this first song like teaches you how to listen. It shows you the depths of certain instruments and how they can sort of take over each other and one become more prominent than the others. It teaches you about some basic tones and then some lingering tones, and how that sort of affects the evolution of your mood, right, and the ambience, right. So just such a fascinating album, song, but so simple. It's very interesting, and I never really looked at it to this type of effect. I've been in ambient music for so long. It's just kind of, but then when you have to actually articulate it, like I'm trying to articulate it, with this video, it does kind of help you understand it to a different level. The second song sort of starts out with voices. In a way, it almost does the same with voices as it did with the last song. It layers some voices, right? It also adds a keyboard part onto the voices, right? It almost the keyboard almost is in sync with it, and also it sort of teaches you. Again, I keep thinking of it teaching because I feel like I feel like the album is teaching you what ambient music is. And as the keyboard is going with the voices, it kind of teaches you that a keyboard can replicate, or emulate, or even replace a voice. There's parts where it fluctuates, and then where it's exactly on, where they go great together, but the keyboard can sort of replace a human voice. So, in a way, synthesizer or electronic music can replace something that's human, right? So I think that's kind of impactful. The first track on the second side. The third piece kind of combines them all, right? So you still got the voices, you got some constant tones, right? But this time it brings in a little bit more emotion, right? And then the last track basically adds a new piece of gear to the whole piece, and it kind of shows you like the next level. So it's the first song sort of has a foundation, right? Teaches you. The second one has sort of a human element to it because the keyboard is sort of replacing the human voice. The third piece is adding more emotion, right? Showing you a different level and some alternates there. And then 4 takes away the voice, adds the full electronic music, and basically shows you the way forward to that instrumental music can be as emotional as traditional hymn or choral music or classical music, right? It's almost advancing music or elevator music to ambient music. It's almost like you take a fairly simple composition and you do it in a couple ways to where it sounds like it's advancing the genre. But the last track also it shows when alternating in different sequences is almost teaching you how to make tiered electronic music. The last piece is a little bit more advanced because there's some things sort of, instead of just sort of taking over like in the first one, there would be a part playing and the second sort of started playing and it slowly kind of take over, but not really. This one fully takes out the human voice, takes out the piano, and adds a different part and becomes fully sequenced. Still very basic. So throughout the album, basically, synthesizer music sort of took over the idea of playing a basic piano in a way. So there's also that part that I took from it too. Like, not only is the evolution of Muzak and easy listening and elevator music transitioning to ambient music, but also piano music is evolving in the keyboard into synthesizer music. So in a way, technology is advancing and the genre is advancing as well. And you can kind of, and so I wrote down some of the reviews that I felt was interesting. These are some reviews that, I'll tell you what. But first before I go over that, right? I feel like with listening to music like ambient music, right? Let me see where I wrote it here. I can't remember where I wrote it, but you definitely have, like, to listen to ambient music. You have to have some patience, right? You have to have sort of an understanding of the. Well, you don't really have to have an understanding of the place because it's going to take you to that place. But if you could have some, you need to have some patience. Again, some understanding, right? I think it's important to be open to understanding what's being, have an open mind, right? And then I think perhaps some experience can help. And you can see in some of these reviews that some of these people didn't have patience. Some of these people didn't really have the understanding. And then some people didn't really have the experience. This guy from Rolling Stone said, "There's a good deal of high craftsmanship here, but to find it, you've got to thwart the music's intent by concentrating." Actually, you don't, because it's ambient music. It's not. It's meant to be background music, right? So this reviewer from Rolling Stone totally lost the plot. So it's so minimal, and he's just like, he's trying to understand it, right? It's so basic, but he can't understand it. That he's concentrating too hard, right? I think that's fascinating because this completely went over his head, right? Here's somebody else that wrote. These are back when it was released. These 4 swatches of modestly ambient music, minimalism, have real charms as general purpose calmatives. But I must also report that they've fared unevenly against specific backgrounds. He later called it a bore. So, like, what is your experience with it? What were you expecting? Like a party music to happen? Like, it's a bore. Ambient music a bore. Well, that's pretty egotistical and not very open-minded, but you also don't really have the understanding of what you're listening to, right? But he says something's calm about it. Well, if you got calm from it, then that's a lot more than the other guy got from it. Here's another one. This person categorized the album as alien, calling it background grunge that was best suited for dish doing and bed making. Hey, I like this review better than the other two. At least he understands that, or she understands that this is background music that you don't have to focus on, right? At least they got that part, right? So maybe they had the experience in mood music, right? Maybe he didn't necessarily have the patience, but probably had the experience enough to know that it was certain music for a certain mood, right? This other person said, a crystalline sunlight through window pane quality that makes it somewhat mesmerizing even as you half listen to it. Probably the most accurate yet. It's warm, it's reflective, it's mesmerizing, but if you forget about it or you missed it, it is what it is, right? I think that's background music, right? This person, this person, now you read some of the ones in retrospect, right? They're all glowing. Oh, this album's great. This person said, can only be appreciated by listening to in a variety of moods and settings. There are likely Then you are likely struck by how music mind allows your mind the space to breathe, and in doing so adapts itself to your mood. So the other person says, like a fine painting, these evolving soundscapes don't require constant involvement on the part of the listener. That's ambient music. Yet the music also rewards close attention with such sonic richness absent in standard types of background or easy listening music. Everything's easier to write in retrospect, right? This person kind of nailed it. This other person wrote that by the strength of the compositions, music for airports fails to facilitate an easily disregarded listening experience. The album is too beautiful to ignore. Interesting. So you can. That's what makes this album so difficult to review, and which is why I'm doing this review and I'm not giving this album a score, because it's on so many levels. I don't know how to score it. It's it's just really difficult to give this album a score. Like, part of me wants to give it like a 80 because I like it like an 80 or a 70, but the importance of it makes me want to give a 90 because it's almost like an instructional tool, like what I went over with how it sort of created the genre to teach you how to write it. It teaches you how to listen to it. It teaches you what frame of mind to put it in, right? How to listen to it, right? I mean, it's, on so many levels, I could give it a 100 score for what it means for the genre, but from a likability listen to it and appreciation for the music part, it's really really difficult thing to review. It's so simple, but it doesn't have a lot going on. But you got to put yourself in 1978, right? It's just a difficult album to review, and I'll probably have to come back to it. This other person said sheer weightlessness, described it as soothing and sublime, a useful album when you're feeling particularly delicate. This other person said to hear music for airports is more than a background balm. These 4 tracks remain wondrous and transformative, able to rearrange the air in the room. So everything's glowing in retrospect, but at the point, people called it boring. People said they had to concentrate, so they're missing the point. This other person said it was calm, but it was sort of uneven, called it a bore. This person said it was sort of background music, and they wanted to rather wash the dishes and make the bed to it, right? So some interesting reviews, and that's what's interesting about the progress of popular music, and specifically ambient music, that they could write that 45 years ago and then now write amazing works about it, right? Amazing reviews about it, right? So who am I to write another glowing review about it, right? I kind of just, from a historical perspective, I kind of wanted to do the review like this and sort of just give some background to the idea of background music and mood music and easy listening, or elevator music or muzak or ambient music. Just wanted to give some background to it, and yeah, I mean, if I wasn't listening to ambient music, I'd probably be playing classical music. If I wasn't listening to dance music, I'd probably play reggae music. That's kind of where I am as a listener. But this album succeeds in what it's meant to do. It's a teaching tool. It's a period piece, and of course, it's groundbreaking. There was avant-garde music before. There was minimal music before. There was people playing unique instruments and recorded it, and it sounds kind of odd and minimal at the time, now in retrospect, and sort of ambient. But this was specifically meant to be background music. That's the difference between the ambient music and what people want to put everything under ambient music for. Like, it's the focus of where the ambience is supposed to be, right? If I'm making music for a carnival, then you listen to it, you're going to feel like you're in a carnival, right? That's ambient music for That's the ambiance, right? So that I think that's kind of the difference between new classical music, and and the idea of ambience. Ambience is supposed to be background music. I always had I've been in ambient music as far back as I can remember. In fact, probably even more far back than I can remember, because I remember being a kid and being into, or at least trying to be aware of what music was being played in the background, whether I'd be shopping, or my parents were grocery shopping, and I can specifically remember, and I even know the grocery store. It's funny because my mom used to go there all the time, but I can remember being in the cart and listening to the music and trying to figure out what kind of music it was. And I must have been 3 or 4 or 5. Like, background music has always impressed me. I've always, oh, I used to work at this small story, but I used to work at this Verizon Wireless in a suburb of Washington D.C. in Fairfax, and it was the flagship for the company, and we had a lot of perks and stuff that other stores didn't have. It was the flagship store for the company. I was the store manager, and we had this thing called Play Network, and if you guys know Play Network, you know this, but the store was made in like 2000 and it was made in like 2006. I think it was maybe 2005, and I started working there in 2010. And they had already set up this Play Network system where the company Play Networks would send you a CD, and you would load the CD into the player, and it would load the music, and then you would throw away the CD, and basically it was just updating the music in the store. And the music was supposed to be cooler and sort of better background music, and I would be like, oh, this is Boards of Canada. I was like, oh, I know this track. Oh, okay, I know this track. And people at the store would be like, what do you listen to all the time? You listen to background music? And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. In a way, I listen to electronic music, and whoever puts these playlists together for the store here is likes kind of some of the music, and feels that they know what background music could be in this type of environment, in a technology environment. And I always thought that was interesting, because I always liked doing music supervision and music spotting for TV, and I used to kind of do that stuff in my free time at the studios I used to work at. So, long story short, I almost got a job there at Play Networks, but I couldn't move to Seattle. but yeah, I've always been interested in music supervision and music spotting for, like, anything, whether it be a installation like a retail store like I was in, or I've done music for photography showings and art showings and stuff like that. And some of the most rewarding times I ever had was DJing, like at fashion shows, or after parties at fashion shows, or photography exhibits or stuff like that. Some of my most rewarding things have been doing music for anything that's like sort of background music. That's always been my love of music, and it all stems from a big piece of that is Brian Eno. I wish Brian, they need to make some sort of non-rock and roll Hall of Fame, and I don't know if they have a classical one, or somebody needs to make like a Hall of Fame for sound, for audio files. Brian Eno needs to be in there. Kraftwerk needs to be in there. Steve Roach needs to be there. There's like these people that will never probably get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they need to be in some sort of Hall of Fame for their contributions to popular music and just sound in general. And Brian Eno. I mean, what can you say about Brian Eno? But really, again, kind of to wrap it up, just a really hard album to review. I don't even know what to score it. I'll have to. I might come back in a couple days and just put a score on the end, and maybe if you see a score on this, then I've already came to the conclusion that I did a score. But at this moment, after just listening to it twice for I don't know how many numbers of times, but I've never done it at this level to like critique it, to try to critique something so simple but yet so important and so impactful. it's just kind of got me like not really thinking with my head, and I'm sort of thinking with my heart, but I should think with my head. I'm kind of conflicted a little bit on the score I should give, so if I do have a score on here, I came to a conclusion, but if not, then I'm still kind of mulling it over. Uh, but yeah, just an amazing listen to, and again, to wrap it up, like, and you can see from the reviews, like, to listen to ambient music, you really have to have some patience, some understanding, maybe some experience, but also just an open mind and an open ear to find the right atmosphere for it. I think if there's anything that you can do to appreciate music, is put yourself in the right ambiance or put yourself in the right atmosphere to appreciate it. Right? I've always done that, and that's why I've always bought music before I've even heard it. For the most part, it's always been like that. I've been like that since I was 10 years old when I first started buying music, because I wanted to play it in the ambiance that I created at my home, which I always felt was most comfortable, right? And I was used to the audio sound, right? I was used to the acoustics of the room. I was used to my component stereos, whatever one I want to listen to on, or but that way when I heard it for the first time, I could really truly appreciate it like I wanted to do for it, and give it my full attention and the best ambiance that I could create for it to appreciate it. And that's how much I respect music as an art. So that's kind of ties in with ambience, music for me, because it's not only ambient music, but it's the music for your ambience, right? This is music for airports, right? I'm at the airport, right? Put yourself in that context. By the way, if you know this album and you'd like to hear a really cool alternate updated version to it, that came out in 2010, check out Black Dog, music for the airports. They sort of did a new version of it. I reviewed it when it came out. It's on Discogs, but in a way, it's if this is music for airports, right? Then Black Dog's version is like music for Concords, like an airport that has all Concords or something like that. It's just like to another level futuristic. Like the planes it's a little bit newer. Like it's not so warm in here. It's got a lot of sounds for the airport into it. So it's sort of like music for the airports 2.0. It's just not only is it a great album to test your speakers on, test your listening on, but it's almost like an adventure into sound, and most of it is related to airports and airplanes and traffic and the background of an airport. So it's just like on the next level of it. So check it out, Black Dog, music for the airports. Really cool. Came out in 2010. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts on this amazing album. Again, really hard to review specifically, but it's a great album to teach somebody how to listen to sparse, how to listen to ambient music, how to listen to have discrete listening, right? To have sort of a what do you call it when you prefer something? I can't think of the specialized listening or something like that. I can't think of what I called it earlier, but when you can sort of tune something out and you sort of focused on it. I said it earlier, but discrete listening or something like that, or specialized listening. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, hopefully it took this review interesting, and wondering what are your thoughts on ambient music as a whole, and maybe this album. Just curious on what your thoughts are about this album and ambient music in general. I'd be curious to discuss that with anybody who writes. All right, thanks so much.